Hey, what's up, guys? I'm TJ. I'm a NASM certified personal trainer, and today I want to talk about the effects of soy on men and some kind of the health benefits that comes along with it. There's a lot of conspiracy about soy is bad for you. It boosts your estrogen and lowers your testosterone. It's something you should avoid, but there's not really much research that shows that, and a lot of research shows that it can actually be beneficial for you, and especially if you're a vegan, it could probably be one of the better protein sources you can get throughout the day. As stated here, results of recent population studies suggest that soy is either beneficial or almost neutral effect on various health conditions, and is a nutrient-dense source of protein, as mentioned before, and can be consumed safely several times a week, and is more often likely to provide health benefits, especially when you have it instead of eating red and processed meat. Because a lot of the time, you'll probably hear people say avoid soy and eat your steak, but steak, as a lot of studies show, has a lot of carcinogens and is probably more likely to give you cancer than opposed to most other foods. So it's very strange hearing a lot about soy and very little about red and processed meats that are more scientifically shown to cause cancer and stuff like that. And as mentioned before, soy has been shown to protect against hormonal cancers like breast and prostate cancer. Soy is often shunned for that actually may be causing breast cancer, thyroid problems, dementia, although these claims have very little backing to them. The thing that makes soy unique is that the fact that it contains a high concentration of isoflavones, which is basically plant estrogen. It's similar to human estrogen, but it still has some differences that make it a little bit more unique, which cause it to have a little bit of a weaker effect, and not something that should be a cause for concern in terms of promoting or boosting one's own estrogen. And with as mentioning before, soy foods are rich in nutrients that are like B vitamins, fiber, potassium, magnesium, and high quality protein, which is probably the most important and interesting part about soy protein is that this makes it a complete protein containing all the 9 essential amino acids the body cannot make on its own, which must be obtained through the diet. Normally, a lot of plant proteins aren't complete proteins or aren't like super good quality proteins. Most of them tend to be seafood, poultry. Then I think you start where you get to red meat and pork and a lot of like other seafood there. Plant protein normally comes after most meat or all meat, but soy being one of those actually complete proteins is probably very important to incorporate into your diet, either generally, if you want a little more of a healthier protein that gives you some of these other nutrients, or if you're a vegan looking to actually get your good quality protein but don't need to try and figure out which protein sources you need to get from what. This can make it a little bit simpler for your diet in your day-to-day. There have also been some studies showing that it could have some positive effects for your heart. There are also some studies that followed men and women that had high amounts of tofu and isoflavones from soy food and showed that they were able to reduce their risk of heart disease by 18 and 13%. And they're also seen as good for the heart and blood vessels because they provide polysaturated fat, fiber, vitamins and minerals, and are low in saturated fat. And like I mentioned earlier, it also shows that replacing red meat with plant proteins are also associated with a 14% lower risk of heart disease. While a lot of people might try and get you to eat more steak, eat more meat, might not be bad in terms of getting protein, but if you care more about your long-term health and your heart, eating more plant proteins, eating more soy food incorporated into your diet might be better, especially if you're prone to eating more red meat rather than eating more white meat or seafood or fish, which doesn't come along with all the same carcinogens that red meat and processed meat do. Now, probably the more interesting thing about this is prostate cancer, because we see the highest amount of prostate cancer in Western countries and lowest in Asian countries, where soy foods are a regular part of Asian diets. We see here isoflavones are incorporated in prostate tissue and may act as weak estrogens and inhibit the development of prostate cancer. Now another thing is that it also can help with memory and cognitive function. Similar to Asian diets, they eat a lot of fermented soy foods, and this can help ward off things like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. The only thing about this is that it may be more have to do with fermented soy foods, so it's like foods that have some probiotics with them. So it may say more about probiotics than it does about soy, but soy could be a good way of getting protein as well as some probiotics into your diet and make it a little bit easier. So you see here, studies in human, however, are not conclusive on soy effects on the brain. So we don't see anything leaning one way or the other in terms of whether soy can actually have a strong impact on brain health. Now, probably the main thing is that is soy good for muscle building? This is probably the thing most people probably care about over your actual health, especially if you're looking to make gains in the gym. And then here it says that soy protein is generally seen as not as effective as whey or casein for a post-workout shake, but the science may say differently. And here, like I said before, soy protein is almost as good or just as good as an animal protein. And this is because it is a complete protein having all 9 amino acids, essential amino acids. And then probably the main conspiracy with soy food is, does it raise or lower estrogen in men? Simple answer is no, but there are some case studies that find 1 or 2 men here and there where they have super high soy diets and they have way more estrogen than a normal man should. But when you take it over a large population and you observe the effects of isoflavones on testosterone levels in men, there are a lot of studies that show this have no effect on testosterone or estrogen in men. And then looking back at the case studies, you can see that they derive not just like a lot of their diet from soy, but almost a lot of their calories from just one food, being soy. And because of this, they're considered to be living on a nutrient deficient diet, meaning that it may have less to do with the soy they're eating and more to do with the fact they're not getting enough nutrients in their diet to get like the normal level amount of hormones in their body. Because probably the best way to get your testosterone up is to exercise regularly and get your diet in order. Because if your diet's a little bit off, if your exercise isn't right, that can have an effect on not just your testosterone, but your hormones in general. And if you're able to get your diet and exercise in line, your hormones will, for the most part, for most people, balance themselves out. And looking at one of the case studies linked before, this is a 6-year-old man who was referred to an endocrinology clinic for evaluation of bilateral gynecomastia of 6 months duration. And then it showed he had estrogen concentrations to be 4 times the upper limit of the reference range, which is very high. It's almost like if he was a bodybuilder taking tons of testosterone and steroids, but in reverse. And if you look here, he said he had a daily intake of 3 quarts of soy milk. That's about that's just under a gallon, or about 3/4 of a gallon to be more specific, in liters. And in liters, it's almost 3 liters for just 3 quarts, which is very high. That's almost, in terms of the amount of water you should be having a day, you're almost getting to that with just soy milk. And then it shows here, after he stopped drinking this much soy milk, his breast tenderness resolved and his estrogen returned to normal. And then the study here looks at a meta-analysis of a bunch of studies, and starts off with noting that there's a lot of concerns about isoflavones or the estrogen in soy feminizing men. And then it tracks testosterone and estrogen in men and sees how soy affects that over a long period of time. And then it found that regardless of the dosage and study duration, neither soy protein nor isoflavone exposure affected testosterone or estrogen levels in men. And then here looks at the study or the effects of soy in premenopausal women and men. Also states the increasing interest in the hormonal effects of soy and isoflavone in both in men and women. And there's been concern that plant estrogen has an adverse effect on men's health and men's fertility, such as lowering testosterone levels and lowering semen quality. Concluding that the recent studies in men consuming soy foods and supplementing soy food showed very little effect and didn't support the claims or concerns that reproductive health was affected. So all of this to say is that there's a lot of hype and scare around soy and that you should avoid it and it's bad for you. But there isn't many studies to show that that's true. As long as you're consuming it in a normal amount, a normal healthy range, you're not just basically destroying the rest of your nutritional diet with just soy, you could probably actually see a lot of beneficial health effects. Because one thing to always keep in mind is that sometimes the difference between poison and medicine is the dosage. And that can be taken with anything. You work out too much and you could be burning your muscles out. Eat too much, you gain too much weight. Eat too much of one thing, you become nutrient deficient. Everything in life is all about keeping it within reason and figuring out what works for you and trying to achieve that to live a healthy life, not trying to find something that someone says you should do to gain muscle, get big, and then taking that and maxing it as much as you physically can. Because while it might be fine and feel good in the short term, in the long run, you're just going to ruin your body and burn out in one way or the other and really affect your health. So try and take things in doses and do things in moderation. And that's probably the boring answer, but it's the one you need to hear. That's all I got for you guys today. See you in the next one.